Alright, welcome back to another video of your first 30 minutes on saxophone with 5 years late, right? Today we're going to be looking at not embouchure and neck construction and opening the case and all that stuff, but specifically on the first 5 notes that come after that, alright? So if you're looking at trying to figure out how it is that you form up your face, alright, and how you put together the neck piece and how to place the reed and everything like that, we're not looking at that today. We are only looking at the part after that when you've built the neck, built the mouthpiece, and you're attaching it to the instrument and you're putting on the neck strap and all that stuff, okay? So, and then, of course, the first 5 notes that you actually normally play on an alto sax, right? Specifically, you want to say an alto sax, not a tenor sax, bari sax, or, soprano sax. We're not looking at any of those today. Those first starting notes on those instruments will be different than it would be if it was an alto sax. In the future, it'll be maybe a tenor sax, but generally, you don't really have to teach them differently. The embouchure is pretty dang similar, right? Anyway, let's look at some of this stuff. So, if you're following along like you should have last time, right? You should already have your little cup of water here, right? Don't just stick it in your mouth. You want to be able to go ahead and talk to your teacher still while you're letting your reed get wet, all right? Which reed specifically, all right? For this case, you're going to want probably an alto sax number 2, okay? Specifically number 2. There's 2.0, 2.5, and there's 3, all right? If you use a 3 or a 2.5 when you're very first starting, it takes more lung capacity to produce steady, solid sounds on that. It also takes more muscular endurance in the muscles on your face when you use those reeds. The 2.5 and 3.0 are literally thicker material and require a lot more force from your face to be able to blow into it. Even myself, after teaching these instruments for years, I don't use a 3. The highest I'll ever go is probably a 2.5, and honestly, because I don't necessarily sit down and play it for an hour or 2 hours a day, and maybe it's like 15 to 20 minutes every day just to maintain certain skills, right? It's usually the 2, just because my face doesn't even have the endurance, honestly, to play on a 3, and I'm not playing so high with my students to where I need a 3. Usually the 3 you might use for like kind of the higher notes. Anyway, right? So, reed's already soaking over there. Make sure it's at least a 2, okay? I will just build my neck joint very quickly, right? As if you're following along in the last video, then you'll kind of know that I said my instrument tends to be very flat, right? So my mouthpiece is very far onto the cork of the instrument. I only have maybe about a millimeter and a half right here left of the cork because my instrument is just so flat, right? That's how much I'm gonna have left on there, right? Now, getting into the part this video is supposed to be about, right? You should always start by reaching into your case and grabbing your neck strap, right? Now, this might be a little bit hard to see because I'm wearing a black shirt and the neck strap is black as well, right? But the one that I like a lot, if you're looking for a recommendation of what neck strap to use, is this Yamaha Air Cell, right? Yamaha Air Cell. Right, you can kind of see it has these nice little bumps, right? Each of them is nice and squishy right here, right? And because there's a little bit of break in between each of them, it gives your vertebrae in your neck, right, some space to breathe, and they don't feel like they're pressed down as much, right? So first thing, you might be like, oh, I want to put the sax together first. No, don't put the sax together first, all right? First things first, put your neck strap on, okay? Your neck strap is one of the most important parts of your setup, right? You'll never hold the saxophone without your neck strap. It's too heavy and it causes a lot of tension to form in your forearms and you just have to work too hard to play the instrument. So put your neck strap on first, right? Now, a lot of times you can, if you already kind of know what you're doing, you can go ahead and adjust the neck strap after you put the instrument on it. But I'm going to tell you right now, you're probably going to want this nice little buckle right down here in front. This guy, you're probably going to want it to be about halfway up, right, between your neck and where the clip is that is going to hold the instrument. So probably somewhere around right here, right? So go ahead and right from the bat, go ahead and bring that up to about that halfway point, okay? That's about going to be, most of the time, the comfortable height that will bring the saxophone to you as opposed to you bringing yourself to the saxophone, okay? You never want to contort your body to the instrument. You always want to try and bring the instrument to yourself and have the rest of your body working as little as possible. Okay, so there you go. We got the neck strap up to the right height. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the instrument out of the case, right? Now, you notice where I'm holding this, right? It's really, really important. When you remove the saxophone from the case, you should always grab it by the bell, right? Which is this nice, solid piece of metal right here, okay? Doesn't matter which side, any way around, as long as your hand is here and you've got a good hold of it, you're gonna be okay, okay? Now, this is gonna kind of rest. Well, you can actually just kind of put it in your lap a little bit, just like this. You know, I have to stand a little bit so you can see it a little bit better, right? Pick it up, and you want to have the clip on top. Go ahead, click it right onto the little ring that's on the back of your saxophone. As you can see right here, right? It's holding onto it, right? Now, you need to let the neck strap do the job, okay? You are not holding the weight of this instrument at any one point in time, really, okay? The neck strap is holding the weight. The weight of it is up here on your shoulders and your neck, right? Your hands do not hold the weight of the instrument. I cannot emphasize that enough, okay? All right, now after that, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take our neck joint, right, that we've, you know, already talked about the construction of in the previous video, and we're gonna put this in the top of the instrument. You're gonna notice there's this little screw right here at the top, okay? This little screw, right, you're gonna wanna have it, you know, loosened, right, but not too much. The neck joint should be able to just slide right in top. If you feel like you have to twist it and contort it all over the place to get that in there, you probably have it too tight and you just need to loosen the screw. Don't force anything with these instruments, right? If things don't just slide in the way they're supposed to, there's something wrong and you just need to, you know, think about it and just take a look and see what you can do to fix it, okay? All right, now, there's two ways that you are going to, well, sorry, first tighten the screw a little bit, right? And now I'm seriously only just get it to just where it wants to stop. You don't have to tighten it past that, right? Getting the screw stuck, right, or tightening the screw past, you know, where it wants to stop is gonna probably cross thread the screw and the threads that are inside the actual saxophone, right? If that happens, you're gonna get the screw stuck and the likelihood you'll be able to take off the neck joint is gonna be a little bit less, right, than normal, okay? So just only to where it wants to stop. You don't really want to go any further than that, okay? Now, once again, make sure that the saxophone can just hang completely, just horizontally. It's not going anywhere. Get comfortable with that, okay? You do have to make sure that that clip has a nice hold right there, okay? Otherwise, you know, if you don't have it and it's not holding the instrument, you know, at this point, of course, it's just going to fall over the floor, and you don't want that, right? So, but trust the neck strap, right? I'm probably going to bring this up just a little bit more, right, just so that it feels comfortable for me, right? Now, I'm going to go, I was waiting to put my reed on here until this exact second because I wanted to make sure it was, you know, nice and soaked still, right? I'm going to clear off a little bit of the extra moisture. Okay. Go and put that bad boy right on there. My number 2, it is a Rico reed. Honestly, if you're getting started, don't give in to any salesman trying to sell you fancy ass reeds, you know, Vindoran or anything like that. You don't need them. Just get a dang Rico, all right? A box shouldn't cost you more than $5 to $6 for 3 reeds, right? If you're spending $10 on a box of 3, either they are seriously price gouging you, or they're trying to sell you reeds that are way too expensive for what you're trying to do. Just get the basic Rico 2s, right? It's perfectly fine, okay? Now, at this point, there's going to be 2 different positions, right, that you're going to want to hold this thing in, right? Now, your right thumb is going to be here on the bottom, okay? Right hand, O is on the bottom, right? Left hand, O is on the top. Here on the back side, you can notice that my instrument has this nice little pearl right here. That's where your left thumb is going to be. And you're going to have a little hook right here on the bottom. That's where your right thumb is going to be, right? Now, contrary to what that looks like, your right thumb is not what's going to be holding the weight. You're going to be pushing away from yourself with your thumb, but the saxophone is not going to rest on top of your thumb, right? That is too much weight for your thumb to be holding. It is a strong finger, but all tendons get tired when you stress them out too much and you make them work too hard, okay? Now, the 2 positions, you're either going to be standing, well, sorry, not standing. If you're sitting, you're either going to have the instrument directly out in front of you, like so, right? Or you're going to have it dangling off to the side. Neither one is correct or wrong, right? Neither one is correct or wrong. The only thing that matters is that you are comfortable and you are letting the neck strap and the instrument do their thing, right? And you're not trying to, micromanage them or anything, right? If you're going to do it in the front, that's the way that I learned, right? Then you're going to have to make sure, right? First, push it out in front of you, just the two thumbs, right? So, and check to see where the reed comes in contact with your face, right? When it's just sitting out here in front of you. If it comes in contact with, usually your chin, right? Anywhere between your chin to your upper lip, right? Then it's going to be okay. Right now, mine is coming in contact with just my chin, right? So, I'm going to push it up just a little bit. You got to make sure that the reed stays, moist while you're doing this process. Otherwise, you're going to go to blow in it, and it's just not going to want to work, right? Which is always a shame. You don't want that, okay? Now, if you are going to let it hang off to the side, and you need to ask yourself at this point, why are you doing that, right? If you are letting it hang off to the side like this, right? You need to ask yourself, are you doing this because you're trying to look cool or because it actually does any good for you, okay? Neither one is going to sound better. They're just, whichever one fits your body the most, right? However, it should be resting against your side when you do this, right? Now you notice this doesn't even get up to my chin, really, right? The mouthpiece and the tip of the reed. It doesn't even get up to my chin. So naturally, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go ahead and bring this up higher, right? Not only that, the neck is not in a good place to even get to my mouth. So you're going to want to loosen the screw at that point, go ahead and adjust it to the side, right? Make sure that it's actually getting to your mouth, okay? And then you're actually going to also need to adjust the mouthpiece, rotate it clockwise, right? So that the top flat portion of the mouthpiece, right, is horizontally parallel to your lips, right? You do not want it to be off angle to the side either way. Otherwise, you're going to have uneven pressure along the reed and you're going to have difficulty getting a good sound. I can't tell you how many times my students just don't have the reed straight across horizontally and it ends up affecting their sound in a really gnarly way. They're wondering why they're squeaking, they're wondering why it sounds bad, why their tone is off, and they just can't figure it out. All I do is just turn the mouthpiece a little bit to the side and then suddenly a bunch of problems are fixed, right? Like I said before, neither one of these two positions, right, off to the side, in front of you, neither one of them is, is good or bad. They're just two different techniques, okay? But you notice, like I said, so now I had it off to the side, so the mouthpiece is in a good zone for that, right? And I just have to rotate it if I wanted to do that. But if I wanted to have it straight, now I have to go ahead, now my mouthpiece is all the way up to the side again, I have to go ahead and adjust that to go ahead and fix it, okay? So I'm going to do that for myself because I learned how to do this straight on, and I really don't feel like adjusting my mouthpiece to do the side option right today, okay? The whole time, go ahead and make sure that your reed, right, is nice and moist so that when you actually go ahead and try and get your sound out of the instrument that you don't have to fight with a dry reed. A dry reed will squeak and squeal before it ever gives you a true tone, okay? Now, the first 5 notes that you're looking at on alto sax, right, specifically, are a G, which is the second line from the bottom on the treble staff, right? The second line from the bottom on the treble staff. There's always 5 lines on a staff. We're not going to look into how to read music today. Maybe that's a video for another time, right? But the G specifically that we're looking at is, like I said, second line from the bottom on the treble staff, right? The second one is going to be A, so the second space from the first space, right? From the bottom, second space on the treble staff, that's A, right? The next one is going to be B, which is the third line on the treble staff from the bottom, right? The fourth one is C, which is the third line, the third space on the treble staff from the bottom. And the fifth one is D, which is going to be the fourth line from the bottom on treble staff, right? Each of these has a different fingering pattern, right? A different set, right? But it's actually really straightforward and not super, super complicated, honestly. Suffice to say, there are 6 buttons, right, on average that you're going to be using, okay? On the right-hand side, you're looking at, there are only really 3 buttons that you have to worry about, right? So the right hand is actually significantly easier than the left hand, right, in terms of finger placement, right? But once you get your fingers on these positions, I want you to make sure that you don't move them, okay? You can touch the little pearl pads with your fingertips without pressing down the keys, okay? And that's really what you need to do. The fingers need to not leave, because if you have to constantly look down and find these keys to be able to do anything, you're only doing a disservice to you. It's going to take longer, it's going to be more complicated, and you're going to be frustrated because you're probably going to press buttons that you don't mean to, okay? So there's 3 on the bottom, just like that. Don't worry about the pinky keys for right now, but your pinky can just go ahead and rest right there on the little rollers that are on that, right? We're not going to use those for quite a while. They're not used until we look at some notes like a really low C or maybe like an E flat or anything like that, in which time, you know, we'll talk about that, but not yet. Okay. On the top side, this is the part that's a little bit more complicated, okay? So you're going to notice that there's a lot more buttons up here, right? And now this may look different for you than it looks like for me, okay? Because I have an old instrument. Mine is a Selmer from probably the 50s or something along those lines. It was made a really long time ago, and I got a nice friend in LA. His name's John. You know, shout out to John. Okay, he buys old instruments and fixes them up, you know, and sells them out, right? And so I bought mine used from that nice old man, and you know, it's really helped me out a lot. And this horn, honestly, sounds pretty good. Okay, so there's a million buttons up here. All right, which ones are the ones that we care about? All right, now going all the way up to the top, right? This one up here, you might think, oh, that's the first button. That's the one you want to press. Don't press that one. Go to the one that's just below that, okay? Now, for anybody else in the audience right here who might have a newer version of a saxophone, okay? The newer version of that button might just look like a little teardrop thing, right, that's hanging out in the front. That's the reason why it's really important to know the difference between what brands you're talking about, what saxophone you actually have. A lot of the newer ones have that little teardrop thing so that you know not to put your finger there. Kind of unlike this one, right? You have to just know if you're using one like this. Don't touch the little teardrop. We're not going to use that for quite a while. All right, so it's the one that's just below that. That's finger number 1 right there. Okay. Now there's all these extra ones down here. Oh my God, we have 2 fingers left, but we still have 3 buttons, right? This little tiny one here that's in between, don't use that one. Not yet, right? That's going to be useful for other notes, but not for any that we're dealing with right now. So go to the second one after that. Okay, this is going to be your second or your middle key. Okay. Now the next one, there is only one more actual pearl pad that's left, right? And that's going to be your finger number 3, right? Now you might notice there's also all of these nice little pinky keys over here, okay? We're not too particularly concerned with those ones for today, but somewhere right in the middle is a good place to rest your pinky, but you don't really have to worry about anything past that, okay? So now this is the part where, you know, we can talk all about fingerings and things like that, right? But I'm probably only going to reference each fingering for each note that we're talking about just once, right? And then, you know, whatever book you're using, you want to go ahead and you can just go back to reference those fingerings in your book, or I guess you can play the section back a couple times to figure it out. All right, but suffice to say, there's the G, A, B, C, and D. All right, now the 2 notes that you are gonna want to start with is either gonna be the D, which is the highest one that we're talking about today, or you're gonna want to talk about the G, okay? Or try the G, okay? Now there's a reason for that, right? Well, you might also want to start with the C, the one that's directly in the middle of those 5, and we'll talk about why, right? Everybody tends to have a different note that might work better for them when they're starting, right? I've had students that cannot for the life of them play low notes, to say, just cannot, right? And so we usually start with the D, or maybe like the high, the C or something like that, just because it's in a better range for their natural embouchure structure, right? And you don't want anybody to feel bad about starting out and their first note squeaking a million times. So you just try a couple notes and you find whichever one works best, right? Now the book that I work out of, which is the Essential Elements book for alto saxophone in E flat, right? Book 1. That book, immediately throws you into D as the first note, right? Which the fingering for that, by the way, I'll go ahead and rest this back up here and try not to be too loud, is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? So you're actually pressing down all 6 fingers. And also, this nice little key right here that's next to the pearl, right here on top, that guy is your octave key, right? So for that note, you're pressing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and the octave key in the back, okay? Not that you can't play it without the octave key, but just trust it and follow it, right? Play with the octave key, please. Otherwise, you might go ahead and actually play one that's too low by accident. Okay, so that's where that comes out. All right, so it's either that D, right? Or you're gonna look at playing the low G, right? So if you're gonna play the low, or not low G, but the G, right? Then you're actually only gonna use the left hand. None of the fingers on the right hand are actually gonna be pressing any of the buttons. You're only gonna press down 1, 2, and 3. If that's the case, right, and no octave key, do not press the octave key unless, you know, the note actually specifically calls for it, or I say, you know, go ahead and use the octave key, okay? We'll talk more specifically about, you know, the rules of that key and how it works, you know, maybe in another video, right? But for the purposes of this note, you're, you know, the G, okay? You're only going to use 1, 2, and 3 on the left hand, that's it. Keep the pinky right over here resting on the pinky keys, okay? You're going to want to make sure that as you have this instrument out in front of you, that you kind of hold it almost like a cup of water, right? Now, I say a cup of water, and people might have their hand immediately glommed on to everything on the side here, right? But you see how many extra buttons are here, right? There's 1, 2, 3 palm keys right here, and then there's like 5 or 6 pinky keys, okay? If you just manhandle this thing and just glom your hand onto the side of the instrument, you're looking at pressing a whole bunch of wrong buttons. And a lot of times in the beginning, something that's going to make you have wrong notes, or the sound isn't going to come out of the instrument properly, is gonna be you're pressing wrong keys, okay? So first things first, whenever you try this, you just make sure you're not pressing any wrong keys, right? Make sure that your palm isn't going over here and crushing all the palm keys while you're pressing 1, 2, and 3 down for that G, okay? Same thing for, you know, the D, right? When you have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? And the octave key in the back, make sure that there's some space. You should essentially always be able to look through, right, your hand in between the instrument and your hand. If you can't look through that, you're holding it too closely and you're glomming onto it. So, you know, try not to do that, okay? Now, you're gonna have some varied success, you know, kind of like I said, all right? So I said it was either G, D, or it would be C. Probably actually B, right? And so B is a really easy one, right? It's just gonna be only the first button right up here. Not the teardrop, the first button where your finger normally goes. So out of the 1, 2, 3, only press down 1. Only 1, okay? That's gonna get your B, okay? It's just directly in the middle of all of those notes. Now, we're gonna try each of them from the top down to the bottom. We're gonna go first D, we're gonna go B, and then we're gonna go G. And we're gonna make sure that we know what each one is supposed to generally sound like, okay? Your tuning may vary, right, from what it is that I'm doing, okay? So if it doesn't sound quite exactly like yours, don't be scared. If you don't like the way mine sounds, oh well, right? We're just getting a first couple testing notes out of it, right? So again, like we've been doing the whole time, make sure you got enough moisture on your reed, okay? If it's not moist, you're not going to get any sound out of it, right? Now, that's part that people usually find kind of gross about saxophone, is that you got to lick this piece of wood that's attached to your instrument, right? But it's the nature of the beast, right? You don't get to get away from it, okay? All right. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and try the D real quick. All right, you should be aiming for a pretty steady sound, okay? As, you know, I'm not talking about the position of the embouchure, right, in this video, because I already did a whole video before this talking about the embouchure. So if you want to go ahead, if you have questions about what I did with my face to make sure that the correct sound is coming out, then you want to go ahead and check out my video before this, which is getting a sound your first 30 minutes on saxophone, okay? And that one's going to tell you about how to do all that stuff with your face, okay? But that's what your D should generally sound like, right? If you don't get that one, or for example, you get a really low one, kind of like, right, as opposed to the high one, okay, then you know that you're probably not pressing the octave key, or maybe there's not enough pressure on your embouchure. Transversely, if you also, I don't know, for example, hit like a really high note, then maybe you're biting down just way, 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 way too hard, okay? Every note, everything you do on the instrument has a nice balance, and you want to be right in the middle of whatever it is that you need to be for each note, okay? D is a very middle range note, but it can seem and feel high for a while, okay? Now, the other one that we're going to do or the next two, right? We're going to do B next, right? So remember, the fingering for the B is only the first finger right here on the left hand, right? Only the left hand, right? First finger. Don't press anything else, okay? So that B is going to sound something like this. Okay, once again, you want to go for a nice, mellow, smooth sound. It does not need to be crazy loud and obnoxious, okay? The speed of your air has everything to do with your sound quality at this point, okay? And also, with whether or not you even get a note out of the instrument. I will touch on this briefly because I think it's really important for this phase. I did say in the last video that if you blow too little, you're just going to get air flowing through the reed and nothing will happen, sounding kind of like this. If you can even hear that. You're just going to have wasted air blowing through the instrument. If you blow too hard, right, all you're going to do is create back pressure in your throat, in your head, and the reed is actually going to just completely press up against the mouthpiece and block off the flow, and you won't be able to get any air into the instrument. So what you need is something really kind of in the middle in terms of how hard you blow, right? But I'm going to err on the side of start slow, blow your air really nice and slow and smooth, and increase the pressure of your air until you just barely get a sound, and then go a little bit past that. So it might sound kind of like this, and it's fine if it sounds wonky to start. Start slow, build the pressure, it'll probably sound like this. Right? If you could hear, there was air flowing through it first, and then the sound started afterwards, right? If that's the only way that you can get a note out the first time, try that, right? And see if it works for you, okay? Now, the third note here that is one of your first, couple notes that you're going to try, right, is the G, right, which is on the lower side, right? So how I said earlier in the video, if you tend to be someone who airs on kind of a tight personality, maybe your embouchure is really, really tight, like in other words, the muscles in your face is, they're really torquing down on the instrument. The D might be something that's a little bit easier to start with for you. If you're a pretty relaxed person, right, and your mouth and face doesn't feel like it's really crazy tight, then maybe you're going to want to go ahead and start with the G, okay? The point is you want to try each of these three and see which one speaks first, right? Whichever one speaks first, stick with that one for the time being, right? But let's hear how our G is, right? Now our G, in terms of fingering, is going to be 1, 2, and 3, right? All of those three. The pinky key is resting over here, or the pinky is resting on the pinky keys. It's not doing anything at the moment, right? Don't press anything down, right? Again, make sure that there's nice little water space, right, in between your hand and the instrument. You should be able to see between your hand and the instrument. If you can't, you're probably going to press one of these palm keys over here on the side, and that's not going to help you out. All right, so here's that G. It's going to feel like it's low. It's really not that low. This instrument can go pretty dang low, honestly. All right, now once again, smooth, even, nice sound, right? You don't want this to be crazy loud, okay? If you feel like you're gonna scare everybody on the block, because everything coming out of the instrument is so loud, you're probably just blowing too hard, right? More air going through the instrument means more volume at this point, okay? So you really need to be, cautious of how hard you're blowing into this thing. Once again, I'll demonstrate. If you blow too hard, you're not gonna get anything out of it at all, right? You can see me forcing it, right? Trying to get the air out, but nothing happens, right? Transversely also, if you start too slow, right, nothing comes out of the instrument. But you can start there and increase pressure and increase airflow until you get a sound. Right? Eventually you will get something out of the instrument, and it should be pretty good. Okay. All right. Now, I will check on the other two notes, right, that we said we were going to learn, because it's possible that any one of those two other notes might be the better ones for you as well, right? So the other two are C and A. Okay, and then after we're all done, I'll play each of these 5 notes in order from bottom to top and back down to bottom, so that you can hear how they sound, in order. Technically, these are the first 5 notes of a G major scale on saxophone, right? Not concert pitch. This is transposed, the G major scale on alto saxophone, okay? We can touch into that on a video later about transposition and things like that, right? But for now, here's a C, right? Which of those top 3 fingers that are up here resting on the keys, you're only looking at pressing down, right? All of them are touching the pearl pads, but only the middle one is actually pressing anything down at this point. That's going to be your C. Okay, so here's your C. All right, nice smooth mellow sound. My C tends to be really flat, so I have to do a little bit with my embouchure to kind of adjust the sound to make it go a little bit higher pitch. Otherwise, it kind of sounds a little gross. Right. The other one that you might be able to use is this A. Right, which from your A, I'm going to generally just reference fingerings now from top to bottom. Right, which the A is going to be fingers 1 and 2. Right, 1 and 2 both together. Right, they need to be together. Right, so 1, 2, just like that. The other ones are still resting there, they're just not pressing anything. Here's your A. Right? Nice, smooth, mellow sound. You don't want this to be crazy or anything, okay? Right? Now, we're going to go ahead and try each note. G, A, B, C, D, D, C, B, A, G, all those notes in order, okay? You don't have to do that all right now. I just want you to see and hear how how they'll go together. Okay, so we're going to start with G. I am going to slur these. I'm not going to tongue each one. I'm just going to go through all of them. And maybe another video we can talk about, tonguing versus slurring. But for today, these are your first 5 notes, just getting a good sound out of the instrument. Okay, those are your first 5 notes on saxophone. And with that, that's what we're going to go ahead and stop today. Go ahead and tune in next time for your next steps on saxophone.